What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Crew 2, and in this video I wanted to put both of the best rallycross vehicles against each other just to see how they really do compare. Now, I'm not going to lie, I really do not think you can go wrong with either one of these vehicles in basically any of the events on the Crew 2 because both of these cars are going to be a really good option. Well, it's kind of funny because one of them is actually an SUV that you would really never expect to be as good as it is. Then we're going to basically have a legit rally car that's definitely going to show itself overall. Now, when it comes to the settings I'm running on these vehicles, I'm first going to start off with the Cadillac Escalade. So I have heard from some people, and I know it's been going around a bit, that this vehicle is going to have some understeer, which I have noticed that a little bit. But luckily, it really isn't going to ruin this truck in any way because this thing is still going to be better than many of the other vehicles in the game. Even after testing out many of the other rallycross vehicles, I always find myself going back to the Escalade because I really do like how this truck drives overall. The stability on this thing's going to honestly be unmatched, even if it might have a little bit of understeer. I still think it's going to remain one of the best overall vehicles to run in the rallycross class. Now, funnily enough, I really haven't used the Enforcer Unit or the Mitsubishi in a while. But after driving some of the other rallycross vehicles like the Ford Fiesta, which I personally have really come to like that car a lot, I can definitely see how the Escalade and the Mitsubishi are going to be better in a lot of ways. Now, I'm sure many players have probably noticed the Mitsubishi being in basically every leaderboard in the game, basically on top, because this car is going to be that good. Now, I do know some players would actually prefer the Lancer over the Escalade, which I could see how you guys would like that. I know both vehicles are going to be different in their own ways, but I feel like both of these cars are going to be a really good option. I personally love driving the Lancer around, but I find the Escalade to be more fun for some odd reason, even though that truck really does not belong being as good as it does with some of the other vehicles being, legit rally cars in the game. But we all can admit the Lancer is definitely one of the better looking rally cars in the game for sure, because some of them I really do not like all that much. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Oh my gosh. I would probably pick the Lancer over the Cadillac when it comes to overall rally car look, because we can all admit the Lancer is going to be a lot better looking in that aspect. The Cadillac really doesn't look like a rally car, but somehow can beat most of the other vehicles in basically every single race. But nonetheless, guys, let's go do a top speed test on the Lancer and the Cadillac to really see how they might actually compare to each other, which I have a feeling these cars are going to be very similar. I did notice a lot of the rallycross vehicles tend to have a very similar top speed, but also kind of different in some ways on how they accelerate and or fly out of turns and all that good stuff. But then I also want to take both of these vehicles into one of these shorter track events to see how both of these vehicles actually compare to each other. So now, starting off with what is probably my favorite rallycross vehicle in the Crew 2 is going to be the Cadillac Enforcer Unit. I'm not going to lie, guys, I have probably barely used a Mitsubishi like I have with this vehicle. I think I have like 600 miles or something on this and like 50 or something like that on the Mitsubishi. But besides that, guys, let's go see what the top speed of the Cadillac actually is. Now, I have a feeling this vehicle is going to be very similar to many of the other rally cars in the game as well. I have been noticing many of these cars have like the exact same top speed, which really isn't going to affect anything unless you guys have a car that has really good stability plus the top speed in there as well. And if the car can also handle, that car is probably going to be untouchable, which I would say the Lancer and the Cadillac are probably going to be in that category. But let's see what this vehicle can do. So running a nitrochemist set on here, I can actually hit about 188 miles an hour. Now, I have been noticing going down like a hill sometimes, like in the mountains or something like that in some of the events, I have managed to hit around 191 miles an hour, but that really isn't going to make much of a difference on these vehicles. Now, one of my other favorite things about the Lancer is not only how this car is going to drive on a lot of the events, but the way this car actually sounds as well. So now jumping right into the top speed of the Lancer here, so one of the biggest things I noticed when jumping into this vehicle is going to be the way this car actually accelerates, and the fact that it's going to redline a little bit higher, but I will jump more into that in the actual event here in a second. So jumping right into 6th gear here, now I'm also running the exact same nitrochemist set I was with the Cadillac. Let's see what this vehicle can actually get to. So 182 there, 185, going over some bumps, basically 188. So I'm going to say these cars are probably going to be almost the same. But let me test it out again over here after this jump. Now, I have noticed these vehicles being very similar with their top speeds, but also like 1 or 2 miles an hour may be different. Really isn't going to make that much of a difference on most of the events there, because even going down a hill or hitting like a bump, I noticed most of the vehicles are going to gain a little bit of speed there, so that's really not going to affect them in any negative way. But let's jump right into the first event here with the Cadillac, and I'll talk about this truck a little bit more. So now jumping into the race here with the Cadillac, so the biggest thing I noticed about this vehicle that really attracted me to this thing the most is the fact that this truck really does have incredible stability. Now, I would say this truck's going to have some flaws to it compared to the Mitsubishi, so one of those things are probably going to be the one issue I have noticed when driving it. I've also noticed a lot of players mentioning this as well. The Cadillac is going to have an understeering issue, but I really don't think it's going to break this truck in any way. I still have noticed most of the leaderboards are probably going to be covered in the Mitsubishi, and that's for good reasoning because that car is honestly incredible, and I can definitely see why so many people love that thing. But for me, I have basically always used the Cadillac most of the time since it actually released, and probably the main reason for that is going to be the way this truck actually handles. I, for one, really do like it a lot more than the Lancer. Now, I'm not saying the Lancer's a bad car in any way because that thing is honestly insane, but I really do think the Cadillac is going to be my favorite overall rallycross vehicle in the class. But I might end up testing out the Mitsubishi a little bit more because I do think that car is going to have a lot of potential. Now, one thing I did notice about the Cadillac is the fact this vehicle is going to perform a lot differently than the Mitsubishi. For one, you guys will probably notice this vehicle redlines at about 5,000, and that car is going to redline over 6. Now, I do think that's going to be a big plus here because now you won't really have to stress as much when shifting. If you guys normally run manual like I do, you're probably going to be finding yourself shifting these vehicles all the time. And you can definitely max out the rev limiter on this truck really fast and probably find yourself going a little bit slower than you should be because you're going to need to find that next gear a lot faster, and I have noticed that when driving this thing, but I don't think that's going to really affect the Cadillac in a negative way, more the fact of well, trying to get used to it if you guys do run manual. But regardless, either way, this truck's going to be a wonderful option on most of the events here, and I would say you guys really cannot go wrong if you did choose this vehicle. And one of the funniest things about the Escalade is the fact that this is probably one of the last vehicles you'd see probably competing in rallycross. It basically has a bumper on it with lights on the top, but yet this thing still manages to beat most of the other rallycross vehicles, which I find absolutely hilarious. So now jumping into the race test here with the Lancer. So one of the things I have noticed about this car, guys, is the fact that I really do love the look and sound of this vehicle a lot more than the Cadillac. I really can't lie on that. The Cadillac's a very cool car, but that thing just is not nearly as awesome looking and sounds nearly as good as this Mitsubishi does, which I did mention before that the Cadillac doesn't even really belong in the rallycross class for that matter. It's basically a truck with lights and a bumper on it, and somehow that thing's destroying most of the other racing rallycross vehicles. But luckily we have the Mitsubishi here that can basically keep up with it for the most part, and I would even say in some ways it's probably going to be better a little bit. Now, I have noticed this car might slide a little bit more, but to be honest, I really haven't found that to be much of an issue with this car all that much. I'm actually kind of liking the way this car can slide. I know the Cadillac does understeer a bit, which can definitely mess it up, but this vehicle I did find to slide a little bit more in some corners, and for some odd reason I'm actually liking it a lot. Now, one of the things I really do like about the Lancer as well is the fact that this vehicle is going to redline at 6,000 RPMs. Now, I know for some 1,000 RPMs probably isn't going to matter all that much, but one of the biggest things I notice about this is the fact that you could probably find yourself getting around turns a lot easier and not actually downshifting or upshifting more than you really should be, which I think is going to make a big difference with these vehicles. Now, I have been finding myself being in the wrong gear in the Cadillac a good amount, which is probably hurting my time in some events. I noticed with the Mitsubishi here, you could shift down a lot easier and find more power in different turns and all that, which I think is going to give this car a bit of an advantage over the Cadillac. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm personally really loving both of these vehicles a lot. Now, as I did mention, I'm probably not going to drive these vehicles all that much in the summits unless you guys would like me to, because I try to stay away from them because these cars are literally just that incredible. I'm also going to show you the settings for both cars again just in case you guys want to check that out. And thank you all so much for watching. The way I look at this is if you guys want to choose the Lancer or the Cadillac, either one of these vehicles are going to be an amazing option.